Hey everyone, welcome back once again to Vicious Chats. I am Tim Vicious. With me today, he's the world's strongest mathlete, the geek with the physique, the head of the coffee core, none other than Seymore Snott. Dude, how are you, man?
I'm doing great.
That's good to know, man. Good to know. So first things first, I want to ask, what made you come up with the idea on the coffee core? Because, proud member, no shame in that game.
That was a something that one of my friends came up with, old man freak boy, and he says, "Oh, you should like start this as a hashtag on Twitter and see if it would catch on." So I kind of did that, and we went from there.
Ah, there you go. So let me ask you, how do you take yours?
I take it black.
There you go, my man. That's on how I take mine. All right, so what's your go-to brand? Is there a
It could
specific
be.
one?
I can do anything. I like a good breakfast blend. Even like off the shelf stuff like Folgers is fine with me. So um, anything, but I think Starbucks has killed it for me. So
Uh, yeah, I can't touch that stuff. But honestly, I'm all I absolutely love Death Wish. I love
that
Death
was
Wish coffee.
yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good brand too.
Oh yeah, I got my sister hooked on it because she saw when everything was in lockdown and according to my son on how he described it when everything went to crap,
Uh huh.
I I couldn't go to the store as regularly as I used to. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna just go on Amazon, buy one or two extra bags, keep them in the freezer. And then my sister saw it and was like, is this stuff any good? Yeah, go ahead, try some. She had, and she was like, oh my God. So she's all about that now. So it's me and her, the only ones in our family that can actually take Death Wish. Everyone else is like, no, I'm afraid to. I'm afraid my heart will explode.
Gotcha.
Yeah, well, I was that super. I had really wicked asthma as a kid, so I started drinking. I had black coffee at a young age,
Right.
so I just grew accustomed to having that. So yeah, that's on that. That's on how I got hooked on my coffee addiction. But so let me ask you, man, as far as your nerdum goes, where'd your nerdum first start at for you?
Probably just an early attraction to sci-fi and comic books. So that probably was the beginning of it back in the late '70s, early '80s. So um,
Yeah,
that was it. And then when pro wrestling came around, I was hooked on that too. So
there you go. There you go, man. That's what's up. Because that's definitely it. If we're from that generation. If you could have been made fun of for liking it from the 70s, 80s, or 90s, we were automatically made fun of and vilified
right.
for it. You know, and now it's funny because you look at it on how it is today. Nerd culture has actually pretty much taken over the world.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah,
hard. It's hard now. It's like oh, it's not like when I used to be around. So it's
yeah,
totally it's cool. It's accepted, but then too many people try to get themselves over with it.
yeah. I mean, there was a time where you could throw out a random Ghostbuster reference at somebody, and only those that would get it be like, "Well, everything was fun until Dickless here turned off the containment grid." Is this
Yeah,
true? Yes, it's true. This man has no dick.
yeah,
Nowadays it's like everyone goes and pulls out something like that.
right.
So, so obviously Batman's like one of your big go-tos. I know you got a whole Batman tattoo, a whole bunch of bat tattoos right there. Yes. So, like, other than Batman, like, were there any other go-to heroes for you?
You know what? I like a lot of the DC characters, but I like a lot of the secondary characters like Green Lantern, Flash, Green Arrow, guys like that. So the Martian Manhunter. So the ones that are a little bit obscure. So
All right. Do you ever read the JLA West Coast
no, I
series?
haven't.
It's, John was like he constantly looked like he was about ready to put Guy Gardner through a wall all the time in that. He was like, yeah, he just anytime like if you ever go on Google and look it up, You could just see
Uh-huh.
random panels. You'll see Jean just constantly looking like he's side-eyeing Gardner. Like,
Oh
if
yeah, that's some
I
good stuff.
could.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so. Are there any ones from the Marvel side, or is it just mostly like DC? Because I know I was Universal. It was whatever I could get my hands on.
Yeah, I was in the 80s Marvel, and then by the 90s I was more into DC, and then I kind of got out of it because I was like comic books were getting too expensive. But in the especially in the 80s, I was a big comic book collector. So
Yeah, I got my nephews all hooked on comics because they were all when they were all little. There was a comic book shop like about maybe 2 blocks from my house.
uh-huh.
So I would just go there once a week on the new releases, grab my fix, and I'd grab them all one and be like, "Hey guys, you keep up with this reading, I'll hook you up." And they're like,
Right.
"You will?" "Yes." And they all got hooked. So I will never diminish comics for that. I'm pretty sure Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, and Dr. Seuss are probably the three most influential people to help kids read.
Yeah, that's true. And later when I started seeing people going, "Oh, Stan Lee," I'm like, "Yeah, I kind of like remember him from the 80s." So, it's nothing new to me.
Yeah. Yeah. So since I get that you definitely dig DC, I definitely dig DC. What's your take on what you think James Gunn's intro into the DC universe is looking like from what you've seen and heard so far?
I don't know. I think it's too much. I think they should just hold off on like maybe 10 years or so. And it's like they want to rush everything out right away. And I'm like, give it some time and just let comic book movies settle down for a while. We've seen everything and everything's been done, and just let it chill out for a while. So,
Yeah, kind of like make the absence make the heart grow fonder.
yeah, yeah, it's too soon, and everybody still thinks of everything that was done years earlier, and it's like they just can't get Superman right, and it's like just let it settle down for a while. You don't need it right away. So, but that's unfortunately the way Hollywood is. Everything's got to be properties and sequels and prequels, and it's the same thing, and nothing's new anymore. So.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm cautiously optimistic on it. Especially given the still image that he showed teasing what Superman's going to look like.
Right.
So I'm cautiously optimistic on it. But from what he said, it sounds like instead of just like it being like an introduction into the DC world, he's just going to make it like, oh, hey, the DC world has had heroes in it for years.
Right.
So almost like if you were just going to the store and picking up an issue for the first time.
Right.
So that's where I'm kind of optimistic on that because I think that might be a cool way to introduce some new readers as opposed to like, hey, let's rehash the same origin story we have 600 times.
Yep.
So let me ask you this: Who's your favorite Batman
Uh,
outside of
it,
Adam West? Because Adam West is always going to be considered the great one. Let me rephrase that.
you know what? I was always I guess it would be either Christian Bale or Val Kilmer. So, my problem with Michael Keaton was he's okay, but the fact is he's basically too short. So, and he never looked like he could just beat up everybody. So I'm just kind of like, it's a presentation with him. It's the suit and it's everything that's covering him up that makes him look great. But I mean, it after that, you've got to figure out how can someone play Bruce Wayne. So
Yeah. Personally, and I'm pretty sure I'm in the minority, I got to say Ben Affleck just because he did the Frank Miller Dark Knight Returns Batman phenomenally, and that's my favorite Batman story ever.
uh-huh. I
So,
think the only problem with Ben Affleck was he never got his own movie. So
yeah,
that was always the problem with him. So
yes, I was so sad when they announced they canceled that because we were gonna have Joe Magliano as Deathstroke, and they were gonna do that to introduce a new Robin and all that, and just like, oh God, man. Yeah, that's it. So now that we've done having our nerd moment, so as far as on your wrestling goes, let me ask you now, what made you go with the whole nerd kind of persona? Because obviously I know a lot of people always say, I'll just have it be you turned up to 11. Is it more so something like that? Or was it like, I am kind of like this, but let me just like do something, throw a little bit of this and that in there.
Well, someone when I was in wrestling school, someone saw me and I had on a pair of glasses and they said that should be your gimmick right there. So that basically launched it. And after I started, I'd say probably about 9 months or so later, that's when I actually debuted. So um, that was the first gimmick I ever had, and I thought I'd just keep it because it was easy to do. And so not everybody else tries to do something, they try to do a different character or gimmick, and it's like it's not you, and it's just not natural. So I just went with something that felt natural. So
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. So, and one thing I gotta say, man, I've seen once I square away some bills, I gotta hop on your Pro Wrestling T store. Your one shirt, it looks the and your one shirt, it's a carbon copy, the one that looks like the Charles Atlas comic strip, man.
oh
I
yeah.
dig that, man. Did like somebody come up to you and say, "Hey, why don't you try and do the Charles Atlas strip thing for like some merch?" Or was that just like a random light bulb moment you had out of nowhere?
No, that was one of my friends. He's a comic artist. His name's Jesse Justice, and he just came up with that. And he says, "I got an idea for he says, check this out." So he drew it up, and we did it on Sticker Mule, and we made a couple shirts, and they look great. And I said, well, let's try. I got on Pro Wrestling Tees, and I decided to put it up there. And he's like, he goes, oh, this might work even better. So there we went from there. So
Yeah, I got to tell you, man, because you know a lot of people don't quite understand when you're little, like my son, he says he understands it because I tell him all the time on what it was like growing up nerdy, because it's not like it is now. No,
right,
we were constantly bullied, picked on, and we were those kids that were like, oh, if only I could be like big like this guy or that guy.
right.
So and that's why I love that shirt, man, because that just like brings back so many memories when I was a kid. Like, if I could have just been big like this guy or that guy. you know so
Right.
who were your go-to wrestlers growing up?
Well, believe it or not, when I first started watching wrestling, I was into people like Ricky Steamboat, Randy Savage, the British Bulldogs, the Hart Foundation. So I was more into the smaller guys and their stuff than I was like the bigger guys. And then um, just as I just like watching. I watched it for years, and those were my go-to wrestlers.
I get that, man. Macho Man is my all-time favorite, and well, you can't make here. Let me just adjust that. I got the Macho Man figure right there,
Uh-huh.
up on my wall, and Randy Macho Man has been one of my all-time has always been my all-time favorite ever since I was a kid. So, you'll just randomly hear me doing, yeah, that's right, yeah, dig it. So yeah, and now it's got to the point to where one of my nephews, he'll just randomly go and just yell out "dig it" out of nowhere, just to get me to pop, and then we go back and forth to the point my sister yells, "Both of you, shut up!" But yeah, man, it's the whole, like I was saying earlier, the nerd genre. It makes me happy to see on how it's grown, and now it's like the nerd culture has become the norm almost. Like where we used to collect these random figures or do video games or read comics or watch or wait at the video store until they got that one super rare edition of a movie. Now it's like we see everyone like that, and it's just like, yeah, y'all are like doing our stuff now. So it's like the shoes on the other foot.
Right.
It's almost it's like it's really great to be a nerd in this time of age.
Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely am. So, wanted to ask you also. I know you've got on your Twitter profile your former Air Force, right?
Yes.
What was your MOS?
I was in aerial photography, production, imagery production, and I developed photos. So that was my deal. I did that in Vandenberg and in England. So
Oh, all right. Oh, cool. My brother, he was a leatherneck, so he would, if you talk to him, he'll tell you all the time he was going to go into judge advocate, but once he got off the island, they're like, no, you're going into administration. And then about a year later, they said, no, now you're going to go over into Fallujah, and he actually headed up security at Camp Fallujah.
oh, okay.
Yeah, the stories that he told me, it was like, woo. So those ones are meant for him. I'm not gonna go and do that.
Yeah.
But man, yeah. So if wrestling never so was wrestling always your main call, or was it like, do you ever think, after I'm done doing my service, maybe I'll go into photography on a more permanent basis?
Now around 1995, I said I made the decision I was going to go into wrestling. So that was uh, that was how it all happened. So
All right, cool. Who was your trainer?
I was trained by Michael Modest in Hayward, California, at the APW boot camp. So that was around 1998. I went out there.
All right, cool. So you pretty much saw on how like the indies went from like during the 97, 98 into the 2000s, like during that boom era with like the Monday Night era,
Yeah,
going from that to when everything pretty much imploded in after WCW and ECW fell to
yeah,
seeing the indie boom again.
yeah.
So so what was it like seeing it going from like that? 'Cause I know some people would like to say like, oh well, it's cyclical. You'll get your ups and downs, but just from the inside perspective.
I think it was a little bit more competitive. I think in the late 90s, because you had more places to go and not everybody owned everything. You still had like ECW and WCW, and you still had places like, Memphis, and um, opportunities to go to Japan and all this other stuff. And after things started changing in the early 2000s, I think a lot of those opportunities dried up. So, it's great what WWE is now, but uh, it's not really the wrestling business anymore. It's kind of like a big corporate thing now, so entity, and um, it's pretty much big like the NFL or Major League Baseball, and they're going to have advertisers and everything. So um, the old school way of doing things, I just think, is kind of gone by. So,
Well,
which is
let me.
sad.
Well, that kind of brings up my next question. I was going to ask you. You think that's kind of a good thing or a bad thing that like some of the old school stuff is gone? Because I know some people say, oh, well, yeah, you got to make room, got to move forward, adapt, and all this, that, and the other, blah, blah, blah. But you also get the argument there's no school like old school.
Yeah, I think that the with WWE becoming as big as it is now, I mean, it's going to be more. I think wrestling's probably going to get more controlled. Um, WWE, especially now, they're going to indie events during WrestleMania weekends. So, um, it's hard and it's competitive, but I think, if some people can stick to it, good for them.
So what kind of advice would you have anyone that's listening and wanting, like, maybe they're looking into a school, or maybe they're in a school but they're starting to second guess themselves? What kind of advice would you want to give them?
Just study everything, just take advantage of every opportunity to learn everything. So if you don't learn everything, it's going to be a struggle. So be a sponge, keep your mouth shut, and just listen.
Ah, that's cool, man. That's cool. I'm glad to hear that. And honestly, you can make fun of me on this. I used to do the backyard stuff.
Uh-huh.
I did backyard stuff from the time I was 12 until I was like 27.
Right.
So yeah, so I know some people call those kind of dudes like yardards and whatever, but some of those guys, they do kind of help set the stage on, like, if I can do this here, maybe I can jump into school. Where's
Right.
your stance on like backyard guys? Because I
Um,
mean, aside from the blood and guts kind of ones.
I think it's definitely, it gives you some passion at the beginning. It's definitely, you probably have a better love of it than most people do. Some people just don't love what they do. And I guess it gets you, as long as it gets you involved, it's okay. Um, but other than that, it's, some people can start off. I mean, you look at some guys that did start off as backyard wrestlers, and they ended up doing very well for themselves. So it's just a matter of um, learning the basics and going from there. So you don't go out there, and when you do it for, in a on an indie or anywhere else, you just get hurt.
Yeah. I mean, if you're putting on if you're putting on a backyard show, don't
Uh-huh.
go just making it all blood. And I'm don't. It's no sense in making it all blood and guts where like you're smashing each other with glass and barbed wire and stuff.
Right.
You know, I mean, small little bits here and there that might be okay, and that's okay in small doses. But if that's your regular go-to, just dude, no. Like I tried showing my son some ECW stuff because I grew up in Philadelphia and I grew up
Right.
seeing that stuff on a regular. And he saw it and he was like, "Oh my God, you, Dad, you used to go to these shows?" Yeah, that was regular for me. Oh my God. And you'd have thought like he just saw somebody shoot Bambi.
Right.
Like he had that kind of look on his face, like, oh. Whereas I showed my brother's second oldest, my nephew, I
Uh-huh.
showed him some ECW stuff and he was like, whoa, you used to go to this? That's cool. And then he asked to borrow my Peacock account and then wound up looking up what's it? He looked up the Kurt Angle Shane McMahon match and he was asking me like a million different questions on that. So, and just like, no, 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 do not, because your dad will kill me. You know, last thing
Right.
I need is for him to go and beat the crap out of me because I'm showing you this stuff. You know what I mean, man?
Right.
Yeah. So like, so I know obviously you got your nerdum. So what kind of collection stuff? What kind of like, do you got any like collections or anything you do? I mean, aside from like some books.
I'm pretty much into anything Batman as far as action figures go, and I'm collecting the McFarlane superpowers right now. So,
All right. All right. I just saw a thing drop. I saw a thing pop up on my news feed the other day. Um, there was a new McFarlane series. I think they're dropping relatively soon.
mhm.
McFarlane Toys is dropping a new line relatively soon. Did you see the Jokerized series that they made?
I did. I was not. I wasn't a fan of it. Some of them I'm like, it's great that they're doing stuff, but like I get some of the Batman 66 stuff, but this the Jokerized or the vampire stuff or even the black and white stuff, I don't really pick that up.
All right. Was there ever like a random one? Like, do you ever pick up a random figure and be like, oh, I never read that story, and it just like kind of introduce you into a different one?
Not really. I pretty much go with a lot of like old school looks for the characters, so
All right.
not much of the new stuff.
All right. Fair enough. So, so you have, I don't know if you kept up to date, but they did a whole new thing with Batman where Bruce actually lost his hand and they replaced, and he's now has like a robotic one.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know if you kept up to date and saw that or not.
No, not yet.
Oh no, yeah, because he walks around and it's like a black glove on, and it's just like you'll see him just like normal with one normal hand and then one black hand. It's like, yeah, really gonna have to work on that. But it also introduced Batman's contingency plan if he ever went rogue.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you have you seen or heard on that.
No, I haven't.
It's a Android he made called Failsafe. It's
Uh-huh.
got a AI program that adapts and learns, and it's actually the what was it? The Batman of Zaira actually took it over
Uh-huh.
and almost beat him within an inch of his life.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah. It's whenever you can, if you can, like that. It's a decent. It's been a pretty decent story. I dig it, but I'm also weird, and I have that mindset of if I like it, I like it. If I don't, I'm not going to touch it.
Gotcha.
You know, so I'm relatively easy to please in that sense. But man, I'm glad. I thank you for your time. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be here. I say this to everyone that ever comes on. You could have been out there doing a million different things, but you chose to sit here for a few minutes with me,
Oh, no
jawbone,
problem.
learn some stories. Absolutely love and appreciate that, man. You're always welcome back anytime. If you got any socials or any plugs you want to give out, any upcoming bookings, by all means, the floor is yours.
Sure. You can find me on Facebook at Seymore Snott. I'm on Twitter, of course, at Seymore Snott. I have a pro wrestling tees store, and I'm also on Instagram at Super Snot One. And I'll be wrestling in the city of Raleigh on June 15th for Gouge Wrestling.
Yeah, and I meant to ask you on that, man. How is Gouge doing? Because there was a time when when the coffee court first started, it was like Gouge was popping up on my timeline like crazy, and then once COVID
Uh-huh.
hit, it was like it almost all but disappeared.
It's coming back. There's a lot more shows coming up in the summer, so definitely
Oh, good.
mostly at breweries. So it's a good place to go have a beer and watch some wrestling.
I know a couple buddies that would definitely be all up for that. I thank you again, dude. I thank you for your time. I do appreciate it. And like I said, you're welcome back anytime.
Thanks. I'll be back definitely.
Awesome, man.
All right.
Thanks.